Gone off? Hello. So let's start with an easy question. I'll do a first question to get us going, and then the delightful Anthony has a microphone if people in the audience have some questions, and so does Chris. So we'll start with an easy one. Dave, what did you not put in the book that now you wish you had, and you are not allowed to say DevOps?
I have a microphone. I think it's that. What would I have put in the book? I think since I wrote the book, I've kind of thought more about science as being the rationale, and I didn't really mention that in the book. So I wish I'd kind of grounded it a little bit more in the scientific method in terms of describing the process. But apart from that, there's nothing that kind of leaps out and really embarrasses me that's still in there. So it's not too bad.
Okay. Shall we take our first question from the audience, please? No. Nobody. We're just going to go home.
Or to
Phil will have a question.
What do you think are good reasons for not doing continuous delivery? Or the best reasons for not doing continuous delivery? Or the best excuses?
Okay. Who would like to take that one? How about Phil, because you've been doing continuous delivery for quite some time now. When should you not do continuous delivery is the question. What's the reason to not do it?
So there are certainly some environments which make it harder. So for instance, certainly in our case, the thing which is most problematic in terms of continuous delivery is our iPhone app, because you've got a gateway there in terms of Apple, which means there is a time where you just, there is a lead time to doing a release and you can't get around that. I mean, you can still aim to be at the point where everything is releasable and ready to go, but it's, it does limit you in terms of how often you can actually release the software. I think that, there are certainly some companies which still manage to have at least a weekly release for an iPhone app, so that it's getting towards that point. But there are some elements where you've got that. Obviously, if you're dealing in kind of packaged software, that's going to be more problematic. I'm sure there are other excuses, but those ones I can immediately think of.
We have in our enterprise quite a few applications which have very few changes. There is maybe a few changes to them to support new model years. There is the full year to develop these changes, and it needs to be done by March. And that slow pace of change, it's not really worth doing all the automation for, especially since they're legacy and have existed for a long time. So I think it's not really low-hanging fruit, and it's not really crucial to do continuous delivery there.
I think if I take it from a customer perspective, my answer is if you're Facebook, because every time you change the UI, I bloody hate it. So, there's a question mark about not whether you can continually deploy or can continually release, it's whether you should. Because, as a customer, sometimes you get change fatigue. And particularly if you're, for example, you're doing a factory or warehouse system where you've got, relatively high turnover of staff with a relatively low level of IT knowledge. You don't want to be changing and turning over that interface every week, because you're not going to be sending trainers down there every day to change things. So there has to be a level where you start to think about the barrier is this came up in one of our open spaces session. The limit is the change that your customer is willing to accept and absorb. So maybe the limit is not the technology, the limit is the customer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We actually had with one of our products a really similar issue where it was a product that lots of developers needed to have their own copy of it, and it worked together across lots of different developers. And you could get some interesting situations when you're all using the same product together, but all of you are on different editions, and we're releasing a new edition every 2 weeks because we're trying to do the frequent release thing. So we actually got around that by introducing a frequent release track and kind of more infrequent stable build track, and then companies can make their own decisions about which one they wanted to go for, which gave us all of the benefits of being able to release frequently and getting people on different editions, but also gave the customer the ability to turn that off if they wanted to.
I think that if you're a developer and you really like being called out in the middle of the night and fixing production bugs, that's when you don't do continuous delivery.
Isn't that what operations people do? Is that what
Well, not if you believe in DevOps. I mean.
The developer always gets called eventually, always.
Sort of going back to that question about, if your customers don't want that amount of change, I think it's still worth going through the process of getting the software out into production more regularly if you can, even if you're behind a switch, it's actually saying, this isn't going live, we're going to put it there, and we're just going to have it ready and know that we've got the confidence that it's there and it's ready to go when they are ready for it.
I think the other thing is there's a thing about how well you do it. I don't know what other people think, but Amazon are releasing changes every 11.6 seconds, and I don't have a big problem with the Amazon. I don't know or care what the changes are. I don't see them. Their system just works, and it seems pretty good to me. So I think there's a model about how you design for that change and how you implement it. If it's really in your face and obtrusive, the iPhone model's pretty unpleasant, kind of forced to upgrade and download all of the time. That mitigates against it. But otherwise, if you're designing intelligently and incrementing your behaviour intelligently, some companies do it quite well. I think it can work even at quite a high pace of change.
Okay, should we go to the next question, please?
I just wanted to make a comment about the previous question. Actually, it wasn't to ask a new question. It was one of the things that I think Google do nicely with Gmail is if they do a new feature, they have a sort of scaffolding to show you how to use the new feature. So, I think that's one of the ways that you can mitigate making changes, to user interface type stuff is to lead people through those changes.
Also, they have lab stuff which you can opt into, which might come to everyone later, and I think that's another example of where you can get people who want the change to have it and use that as a way of evaluating the change before you push it out to everyone.
So that's really effectively pull versus push, and allowing the customer to adjust where they are on the innovation curve that matches their personal rate of adoption, early adopters versus laggards. But again, it's still making the point that it's about what the customer wants, not what about you as developers want to shove down their necks.
But sometimes the customer doesn't know best, right? I mean, today's OpenSSL vulnerability, in a pull-based world, that's going to be a problem for years to come. You need to push that fix out to people immediately, regardless of what they think.
Some people have also argued that people are now looking at some of the legacy companies and saying, well, why am I only getting a new version of Windows every 2 or 3 years when I get a new version of Flappy Birds every couple of days or something? What I mean? So there is perhaps an embracement or a willingness to embrace faster rates of change.
Okay. Next question or comment.
So I just wondered, are there any, in the same way that when we went from more traditional things like waterfall and V model to Scrum and stuff, as we move towards CD and DevOps, are there any roles from a traditional development team that you think are under threat? Like there are people who don't write code, like BAs, testers, PMs, that kind of thing. So how do you see those folks and what they've got to do changing as you go towards continuous delivery and DevOps?
I would say there are changes to the skills in all roles to switch over to the kinds of models that we're describing. So everybody has to change a bit. I think that one of the more difficult things is kind of testers that only test by interacting through a user interface, sort of manual regression testing kind of people. I think they need to evolve those skills perhaps further than some others, but maybe not. I mean, maybe the step from not writing automated tests to test-driven development is bigger. I think all roles need to change a little bit in order to do these sorts of things. I don't think that rules people out from being able to make that change. I don't think it's rocket science to be able to do this stuff. But it is a change in perspective, a change in approach, and there are new skills to learn.
So for me, so I speak to customers, about a dozen customers a week, and I've seen over the last 3 years. For me, the most important thing is talking, being sociable and speaking with the other people in your team. I think just about every single product vendor today has said it's not about the products, it's about the people, and that's so important. As a salesperson, when I've been speaking to a company who've been trying to adopt continuous delivery, it's the ones that have been able to talk to each other that have managed to adopt it. I was at a client in the Netherlands last week where they said that they've got a real problem with some of the testers at their organisation. This tester managed to find a bug or find a problem, and rather than tapping the developer who committed the change into source control, who was actually sat next to him at his desk, he'd walked down the office to the person that had deployed it and said, I found this change. People need to be working much more together as a team, cross-functionally, and able to cross those boundaries between faculties. I'm actually a salesperson, but I sit with the development team, and I'm kind of, I guess, the extension of continuous delivery, that I'm speaking to the customers and feeding that right back into the dev team. And when I'm on a customer demo, if I find a problem, I say to the dev guy sat next to me, by the way, go ahead and fix this problem. So it's bringing people from all functions to actually communicate together that I think is the most important thing.
Yes, as you said, I think the importance is to focus on the team and the competence of the team rather than the individual roles, because that was one of our biggest problems. We were trying to staff the teams with roles instead of looking on what competences we needed. And I think that if you break down the competences, then you'll see that almost everyone in your organization has competences that will contribute. So much more focus on team and competences than roles.
The one thing that I would add is that we found it was really useful to get people from outside the company in who were in the same role as the people. If anybody is feeling threatened by a move to continuous delivery, getting people who they see as their peers in another company doing the same role in talking to them and talking about what the change involves and what it's going, because we found that allayed a lot of fears about what might happen.
I was going to say, there's probably 3 roles that I think are threatened. One is anybody that works in the project management office, because, you know, a large of your, you know, you're on the change activity board. What's your value add? You know, if we have automated your stuff, you know, and we've found better ways to get the same level of risk, but make it faster and make it more automated, then so anybody who's not adding value to the process, of which I would put large parts of the project management office and the change activity board and many of those other functions. I would say anyone from the operations side who can't script, and that doesn't matter whether you're on a Linux or a Windows stack, because PowerShell is now becoming, you know, de rigueur if you're a systems administrator on a Windows stack. And the third one I would sort of say would be the finance director, who insists on still working on a project model for finance rather than a product level model for finance, because you're as dead as a dodo as well.
Yeah, can I change my vote? I agree with that.
Okay, well, I would vote for test manager, although the Net-a-Porter test manager spoke. When you were speaking, when you were speaking, sir, I was thinking.
See, it's interesting, actually.
There's a storm coming. Next question, comment? Yes, winter's coming.
A slightly foolish question. So after Agile spread and became incredibly popular, you get lots of examples of fake Agile, of, you know, writing down your list of instructions but on index cards or whatever it might be. How is fake continuous delivery going to manifest itself?
I think it already is. I think that there are quite a lot of. It sounds great. It sounds good. We're doing continuous delivery, but we're not doing any of that automating testing business. We're just releasing faster. So I mean, that's kind of skipping the whole verifiability bit, which I think is fairly crucial to this. And I think there are some organisations that are already sort of paying lip service to some of these processes and not really doing what's necessary. It's hard to do this stuff well, and it's challenging. One of the things that I meant to say in my talk today is that I do think it's kind of viral though. that this actually works better. This gives companies a competitive advantage. And so if you're not developing software this way, and your competitors are, they're going to eat your lunch sooner or later. And so I think it is going to gradually become, doing it for real is going to force itself on people, because I don't think you can be as competitive if you're not. But in the meantime, while we're kind of where we are in the hype cycle, I think there's plenty of fake continuous delivery organisations out there.
I've seen Jenkins used to build environments in each environment.
Yeah.
I would actually disagree with Dave's answer. I think it's much more likely you'll see automated pipelines, but cycle time is the ultimate measure, as Dave said, and a lot of companies, cycle time is still the same because silos don't change.
Yeah, so one thing I've seen quite a lot is people set up continuous integration, but they forget the second bit is to do with integration. And what they'll do is they've got an automated build, and they've got some automated unit tests on each of the many different feature branches that they have. But they're not merging them back into main branch. In one of the sessions that we're in today, one of the guys was talking about how he does source control, and he's got this branch, and he merges back in at the end of each sprint every 2 weeks. Sorry to whoever that was. So I think it's important to remember that continuous integration is about integration. It's about bringing everything back together. Regardless of whatever commit test you do, you need to be rebasing all the time if you are using branches.
I think another fake is that still doing manual regression testing after your pipe is done and green.
Yes.
Because you kind of don't trust it, or you don't trust it.
Man, I love that stuff.
I would just agree with Steve. If you're doing continuous delivery but you're not measuring cycle time, are you really doing continuous delivery? If you're not measuring the delivery of value to the business, how are you actually verifying that what all this investment you've put into implementing continuous delivery is delivering business value? So you could argue that that it's if you're not looking at the business value, you're not really doing continuous delivery of value. You're just doing shipping code faster and making a pain in the back for us operations people, which obviously has value for developers. But
I'd like to add to that. I completely agree with that. But also, if if the business isn't using the information that you're generating to make business decisions, because exactly the whole thing is about closing. I mean, in the engineering department, people get carried away. And within engineering, we've got a great feedback loop. But actually, the whole point of this is so that you can make business decisions more quickly. And if the business, whoever's making the business decisions, isn't involved in what data did I get back off the last release, what business decision can I make right now, what actual decisions can I make about how we're going to prioritize our backlog or what we're going to do in the future, then it's kind of a waste of time.
there's your anti-pattern. Open loop continuous delivery. If it's not closed loop continuous delivery, it's an anti-pattern.
It's all about feedback.
Okay, I think we've got time for 2 more questions, hopefully, maybe 3 if we're lucky.
So we've heard time and time again today that continuous delivery is all about the people, and that's my experience and probably a lot of people's experience here today. What I wanted to ask is, when you're in an organisation and you don't have the great powerful hammer of management coming down and saying we are now going to do DevOps and we're going to align the organisation for continuous delivery, and you're trying to more do it from an organic growth from within the organisation, and you're butting up against the typical siloed units of your operation, like your operations team and your DBA team and your testing team, whatever it is in your organisation. What are your tips for breaking down barriers to entry for implementing a continuous delivery pipeline across those silos?
So, as a salesperson, the first thing you get taught in Sales School 101 is work out what the benefit is for your customer. And this is completely true of selling something to another part of the business in another silo. Someone mentioned at a previous meetup that we had, what's the benefit in continuous delivery for a DBA? I think it was you, actually. And for me, you only need to read chapter 1 of your wonderful book to understand that every single benefit there is a benefit to a DBA. So you need to explain how, yes, I want to release frequently. These are the benefits. So you're not selling them the feature, I'm releasing frequently, you're selling them the benefit. If I get good at releasing, I'm going to break the deployment less. There is going to be less downtime, there is going to be less of this. And so, I've mentioned the word sales far too many times in this speech. But yeah, as a member of a team, it's always good to remember that you're selling to the people in the other departments, and you need to put it in a vocabulary and phrase it in a way that they will understand and that will align with their goals.
I'll just say one quick point. We do a lot of talking about DevOps and DevOps transformation, and it applies to CD as well, but a lot of people are looking to the IT literature to tell them how to do their CD transformation and their DevOps transformation. You've got to be looking to the business change literature. You've got to be going and looking at the MBA 101 websites. And what the MBA 101 websites will tell you, that the number one factor for the success of any transformational change program is senior stakeholder involvement. So this myth that you can do it organically from the bottom up is just that, it's a myth. The number one thing that you can do is take your IT director out for a steak lunch and get him on board. Because that's, to be brutally honest, if you're a large enterprise organisation, that's the only way that it's going to happen. Because you won't be able to generate enough value to avoid being trodden on by somebody who sees you as a threat. So take your IT director out for a steak lunch.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I think you can do some change organically, and you can change your own behavior. You can improve what you deliver to the next silo. I mean, if you're delivering to a test group, if you still have that in your organization, you can improve the quality of what you deliver to that test group, and do that before you take the manager to lunch, because then you have something to showcase that, look, we have improved what we deliver to them by doing this much, and then you can start selling from that.
I'm going to be a heretic and say it's not all about the people. The people was important, but actually I firmly believe that we were later getting to the point when we were doing continuous delivery than we would have been, because we had been drummed in so much to us, in terms of what we had read, that it's all about the people, that because all the people weren't aligned, we didn't do the work to make it easy. We didn't get the barriers out of the way, and actually, once we started investing, I mean, I'm sure some of it was just luck in terms of other organisational changes which were going on at the same time, but actually once we did the work to make it really easy and got people's excuses out of the way for them, once we said, look, there is a button there that can deploy to production, and you've got something you want to go, are you going to press it? That changes the nature of the conversation, and so, if you can get to that point, and potentially with something small, not with the sort of crown jewels of your organisation, then proving it in a smaller environment and making it so it's really easy for people to deploy, then suddenly it becomes a different kind of conversation that you're having with people than with saying, we would really like to do this thing, but actually we're going to have to do another 6 months' work before we can even get to the point of showing you that it might have benefit.
I kind of agree with Phil and disagree with him at the same time. So one of the quotes that I like is Steve Jobs' thing about developing insanely great products. How will people know what they want until we tell them?
That is true. I read somewhere that when the iPad was first coming to the testers at Apple, they looked at it and they were like, "What's this for?"
Yeah.
Like the testers didn't understand.
Yeah, there's a degree of truth in that, and some of the conversations that I've had in the breakout sessions today with various folks, there's an awful lot of people in our industry that have spent their entire careers not knowing what good looks like, and so you've got to kind of go over and some of that is technology, but on the people thing, so food's important. Linda Rising's point from Fearless Change about the different, all the all the psychology research suggests that the most influential factor in convincing somebody of your ideas is the quality of the cookies that you bring to the meeting, not your ideas. And those sorts of things are important. I think kind of being the squeaky wheel, being the friendly, approachable, but also stubborn person that just goes around and breaks down those carriers, that walks around the partition and kind of talks to the person in the next pit that's the other side of the divide, and has the conversations and describes things from their point of view. I think those are really important. And my current role is as a change agent, and I'm doing a lot of that. I'm reading a lot of those sort of business books and stuff, because that's what you need to do. And it's a lot of just being bloody slightly annoying, just going around people and say, let's just talk about this, let's discuss this, and let's and doing the human level stuff. So I kind of agree with you and disagree with you both.
Okay, so let's see, friendly, approachable, stubborn, slightly annoying. Yes, I've got all four. Bingo.
One thing. I think
very quick.
So I think there is a lot of bad press about tools-led change, and everybody goes people first and people, process and technology and whatever. But I've worked in a lot of organisations where the organisation is so dysfunctional that go out there, pick a really good tool and implement it, because the tool vendor knows more about it than you do. And the default processes and the default practices and the default workflows that tool has are probably better than yours. And at least from that point of view of demonstrating small-scale change and giving you that kind of demo process that you could then pitch to the boss when you take him out for the steak dinner, sometimes tools-led change has got a bad rap. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. Can I have a round of applause, please, for our speaker panel? And finally, one round of applause for Dave Farley, because without him, we'd all be at work today.